All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're unpacking a massive, and I mean massive, trap that teams constantly fall into: confusing product outputs with outcomes. Look, if you're in product or project management, keeping your team focused on delivering actual value is just an everyday battle. But today, we're going to use a simple family road trip to completely change how you view your daily tasks and, more importantly, show you exactly how to win that battle. So, question for you. Have you ever experienced this? Your sprint is just perfectly planned, the code is flawless, the release goes out exactly on schedule, and then absolute crickets. Zero engagement. This perfectly captures the pain of the feature factory trap. We've all been there, right? Teams just delivering endlessly, closing ticket after ticket, but ultimately creating zero measurable business impact. Shipping a feature flawlessly feels amazing in the moment, but it can so quickly turn into feeling like you're just running on a hamster wheel. And the reason? Because an output is simply not the same thing as an outcome. Treating them like they're interchangeable is actually the root cause of why so many agile teams feel totally burned out, yet weirdly unaccomplished. They're running incredibly fast, but they just aren't moving forward. Okay, so to fix this, we need to draw a hard line between the two. What exactly is an output? Well, it's the tangible thing your team produces, the immediate physical result of your planned work. Basically, if you can point to it, review it in a pull request, or hand it over to someone, it's an output. Essentially, it's just what you build. The most common examples of outputs are just the everyday currency of our work. We're talking lines of code, deployed features, completed user stories, or crushing those bug fixes. Now, these are absolutely essential building blocks. They show visible progress. But here is the catch. Output alone guarantees literally nothing for the user. It really just proves your team was busy and got a task done. Flip the coin, and an outcome is the actual result or impact of that hard work. It focuses entirely on the real value delivered to users or the business. Outcomes only happen when those outputs you built enter the real world and actually change something for the better. So if an output is what you deliver, an outcome is what changes because of it. On the ground, outcomes look completely different. We're talking about things like increased user retention, noticeably faster page load times, a bump in conversion rates, or suddenly seeing way fewer workflow errors. Like, if you write a highly optimized API endpoint, the output is the code itself, sure. But the outcome? That's the lightning-fast user experience and the lower server load you get as a result. Put them side by side and it really clicks. Outputs represent the tasks completed. They're what you deliver, usually measured in raw quantity, like how many story points you burned down. Outcomes, though, represent the actual results achieved. They're measured in real impact. Simply put, outputs answer the question, did we do the work? While outcomes answer the far more important question, did the work actually matter? To make these abstract concepts instantly tangible, let's map them onto a classic weekend family road trip to Disneyland. Imagine it. The car is packed, the kids are already in the back seat asking, "Are we there yet?" And your single objective is to get to the park safely. To actually do that, you're going to rely on two entirely different sets of information. So think of your KPIs and outputs as the car's dashboard, keeping the engine healthy. You're constantly checking your speed, your fuel levels, the engine temp. These are operational metrics telling you if the car is running well right now. On the other hand, your OKRs and outcomes are the SatNav, ensuring you actually reach the destination. The SatNav doesn't care about your tire pressure. It tracks your milestones, your route, and whether you are actually making progress toward Disneyland. When you contrast a typical OKR set, the difference is pretty stark. An output-focused team is merely tracking things like, is the app live or are the features specified? Honestly, that's just staring at the dashboard. But an outcome-driven set focuses on real human behavior, like driving an 80% mobile usage share and skyrocketing customer satisfaction. That is your SatNav confirming you're arriving somewhere valuable. But here's the reality. You literally need both to survive the trip. You can't just pick one. If you get a flat tire, which is a severe KPI drop, you're never reaching Disneyland. But conversely, if your engine is purring flawlessly but you don't have a map, you might drive perfectly, straight into the middle of nowhere. Understanding that difference is only half the battle, though. You have to know exactly when and how to measure them. And that brings us to our next crucial layer of navigation, understanding leading versus lagging indicators. Let's start with lagging indicators. These measure outcomes after the fact. Think of the big stuff: annual revenue, market share, total user growth. Lagging indicators are the ultimate true measure of success. They definitively tell you if you won or lost. But there is a massive catch. By the time company revenue changes or a yearly report comes out, it is way, way too late to adjust your daily actions. You've either arrived at Disneyland or you haven't. To treat that delayed certainty for actual responsiveness, you need leading indicators. These are predictive metrics that measure outputs and intermediate behaviors really rapidly. Because they update so fast, they help teams predict their contribution to the company's long-term lagging metrics. They let you course correct in real time. It's exactly like realizing you need to take an alternate highway before you actually get stuck in gridlock. Think about how the Gates Foundation approaches eradicating malaria. Their ultimate lagging outcome is reducing annual malaria deaths. But obviously, they can't measure that daily. So what do they track? The distribution of insecticide-treated bed nets. Distributing those nets is a daily, highly measurable output that acts as a perfect leading indicator, predicting that ultimate lagging outcome of saving lives. You can see this chain reaction clearly with specific user actions. For example, if you're running a meditation app, tracking whether a user completes a second meditation in their first week is a rapid leading indicator. It predicts whether they'll hit the lagging indicator of meditating 3 weeks in a row. You measure the early behavior so you can actively predict and influence the final impact. So because outputs are fast and outcomes are slow, they serve deeply complementary roles, kind of like the tortoise and the hare working together. Outputs are your fast, operational leading indicators. Outcomes are your slow, strategic ultimate goals. You absolutely need the fast data of your outputs to make sure you're on the right path to achieve those slow-moving outcomes. Which naturally brings up a pretty glaring question. If outcomes are the true measure of success, and basically everyone in the industry knows it, why do so many teams still default to obsessing over outputs? Well, it usually comes down to human psychology, practical constraints, and just the intense daily pressures of project management. Honestly, outputs are just easier to put on a checklist and report in a weekly status meeting. When leadership asks for an update saying, hey, we shipped 5 features, sounds great. It proves you're working hard. Plus, deadlines naturally tie our idea of success to just shipping on time. Outcomes, on the other hand, require time, deep data, and cross-team coordination, so they rarely fit neatly into a 15-minute sprint review. But man, that is a dangerous trap. When outputs stand in for success, teams completely miss the chance to learn which work actually created impact and which features were essentially just busy work. If you pop champagne for delivering a feature without ever circling back to see if it actually improved customer retention, you risk operating a massive, expensive feature factory that generates zero real business value. To get out of this trap, you have to build a clear, unbreakable chain of value. Work has to stay connected to delivery, and delivery must stay firmly connected to real-world impact. You start with your day-to-day tasks, the code you write. That produces a supporting output, the delivered feature, which then must drive a desired outcome, like a faster onboarding experience. If you break this chain, your project totally loses its meaning. So, if there is literally one single thing you take away from this explainer, let it be this. Outputs are the means, outcomes are the reason. You absolutely cannot achieve outcomes without outputs. You have to build things to change things, right? Outputs give shape to your intent, but it's the outcomes that give meaning to your delivery. Never mistake the means for the reason. Think about your current project goals and the metrics you're looking at every single week. Ask yourself, are you truly navigating toward real value, or are you just keeping the engine running and staring at the speedometer? Are you just driving, or are you actually getting to Disneyland? Keep your dashboard healthy for sure, but never, ever take your eyes off the destination. Keep pushing for impact, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.